one of my most famous mentors was Bernard Jensen, and I won a scholarship to study with him in California. He wrote a very famous book called Tissue Cleansing Through Bowel Management. Must detox between major round cycles of chemo to get the best out of it. Good question. Yeah. There's the question of a clinician, because you want to test for it so you can measure it and then retest it and make sure you've got rid of it.
Part of our series of Secrets of Herbal Healing, we're going to start interviewing some practitioners, pioneers, innovators, and leaders in the field of herbal medicine and practicing in the fields of naturopathic herbal medicine. And today we're interviewing an associate of mine that we've been working with for the last 13 years or so, David Holden. And he's a biochemist, naturopath, and he's got a lot of background with a great deal of pioneers in herbal medicine, naturopathic medicine, and he does a lot of detoxing. And I met him in Auckland when he was running a clinic there, and he's treating a lot of cancer patients, and he's using a lot of our detox products. So I'm going to ask him a series of questions about his philosophy, how he operates, and what his mode of practice is with detoxing and how it triggers healing in people. You're going to find this really interesting. So let's get into it. Hi, David. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, great, Brent. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, I think we probably originally met 12, 13 years ago when you were in your clinic in Takapuna there, or just outside Takapuna.
Yes, I worked in Takapuna for 9 years in 3 different locations right next to each other. I went 5, 7, and 9.
Right.
Anzac Street, right in the CBD there. It was a great location.
Right. I remember popping in there. I think you might have taken interest in the detoxing products, and we popped in and was sort of...
Yeah, because I was teaching iridology classes and natural therapies and kinesiology classes, and I found from muscle testing that your product was the best on the market, so I started recommending it.
Great. And we've had a lot of contact ever since. And it's
we have, and I keep buying more off you because it's such a good product.
Yeah. It's been really good to see what you've been doing, and I've just been looking at your history of the different modalities, natural health modalities you've been into, and so I'm interested into what got you started in the very, very beginning. What got you into the alternative or the complementary natural side?
Well, that's a very interesting story. There's 2 stories, actually. There's the one story where I just felt in my gut that mainstream medical science wasn't for me. I'd done a bachelor's of science degree equivalent in Victoria University and CIT Heratonga in microbiology and biochemistry. And I was working as a government-trained laboratory scientist technician, and I was getting really bored with agar-agar plating and test tubes and having no people contact. Right. So that's what I wanted. But what I did was, a friend of mine said, oh, look, the Spiritualist Church in Wellington, so it was in Wellington those days, is having a big meeting in Courtney Place, and they've got some clairvoyants speaking. Would you like to go? I said, why not? I'm open-minded. Yeah, let's check it out. So you put a witness, which is a piece of jewelry you've worn, in a numbered box, and then you remember what the number was. So the clairvoyants didn't know whose possessions it was. They pick them up, do psychometry on them, hold them up here, just feel them. And this woman eventually, after about 10 people, picked my number.
Right.
And she picked up a ring I'd been wearing. Actually, it was a pendant. And she held it up here and she said, oh, this person's into healing, but the wrong type. They need to get rid of the white coat and go into natural healing.
Oh, interesting.
And they need to move from Wellington to Auckland to do it. And I just about fell off the chair, because that very week I put an application in, or I thought about putting an application into the South Pacific College of Natural Medicine, or Natural Therapies as it was known in those days, in Auckland. And after that, I got goosebumps, and then I got accepted. And so I moved to Auckland, left my job, left a city I'd first come to New Zealand, because I originally came from the UK, in Wellington, and moved up to Auckland in 85, and I've never looked back since.
Right. And then you opened the clinic there in Auckland?
I did. In fact, it was really cool. My head nutrition lecturer, kinesiology lecturer, and osteopathic lecturer at South Pacific College was Angela Chadwick, who is she could run a school on her own. She's a qualified naturopath, herbalist, homeopath, counselor, psychotherapist, you name it, she's got a diploma or a degree in it. She was a hypnotherapist as well. And she owned a property in Mount Eden, said, would I look after it for her? I could live there while I was studying, and I could fill the house with students. So I did. And we had a whole crowd of 5 different naturopathic students living in that house at one point. And I just took different rooms over as my practice got bigger and expanded from 3 days a week to 4 to 5 to 6, and it just got busier and busier and busier.
So you've seen a lot of change over the decades, a lot of growth, and I guess met a lot of people. I keep hearing names of people that you've well-known people that you've met and that you know, but I'm interested in the journey that you took from one discipline to another. I mean, it sounds like you've gone from mainstream medicine's science into the natural side, but then you've got all these other disciplines that you've picked up along the way, the biochemistry, the naturopathics.
Yeah, well, the biochemistry mainly got from orthodox medicine, though I did a postgrad diploma in nutritional biochemistry in Australia,
right,
and really got into nutraceuticals, supplementation, herbal medicines, homeopathics for altering people's disease states to wellness states without using pharmaceutical drugs. And I got really interested in that area, and that sprung into a whole lot of other areas. But one of my most famous mentors was Bernard Jensen.
Yes.
And he was very famous last century. He wrote over 105 books in his lifetime. And I won a scholarship to study with him in California. So I went over there over 2 or 3 years and did a number of courses with him, his beginners, his intermediate, and his advanced. And then I won an internship and studied with him for a lot longer in California.
Yeah.
Made a whole lot of contacts there, and then decided to do a master's degree in naturopathic oncology with Dr. Christopher Hills, who's many older people would know that name. He was the man that put spirulina on the map to the West in the 1980s, early 1980s, sort of caught on in New Zealand in the late 1980s. And he wrote a book called Super Sensonics. He was a very smart man. He had a master's in science, same degree I did. He did a PhD, and he was very into yoga. He studied yoga philosophy a lot. He was quite a mystic. He did a lot of meditation. And interestingly, he knew Bob Marley and became a Rastafarian.
Interesting. Yeah.
And he then connected with the Jamaicans and became a diplomat for Jamaica in the United States. So very colorful character, extremely eccentric, but fascinating person to be around. Same as Bernard Jensen. He was quite eccentric too.
Bernard Jensen was an inspiration to me early on too. Wasn't he one of the very first pioneers into this whole iridology detoxing combination? I remember seeing him do a lot of that.
Yes, so, he wrote a very famous book called Tissue Cleansing Through Bowel Management.
Right.
And it had graphic pictures of these bentonite detoxes he would do, and all these strings of toxic plaque and adhesions, which we now know as a negative microbiome. And he'd flush this right out of the small intestine and mainly the large intestine. And he really put cleansing and enemas and colonic irrigations on the map. And of course, Princess Diana was right into colonic irrigations as well. She came across him actually while he was still alive. So yeah, he was a fascinating man, and I went to his ranch many times and watched the master at work, and it was very inspiring, very extreme.
I bet he's inspired thousands of practitioners around the world as far as,
tens of
understanding.
I mean, I was going to see him in the late 80s, early 90s, and I won the scholarship in 92. I graduated from South Pacific College in 88, and then went on and did more courses with him, and then connected with a whole lot of healers, chiropractors, naturopaths, osteopaths over in the States. And so I've got quite an extensive network over there who are now leading edge practitioners, which is quite exciting.
It's interesting. A lot of these disciplines have a similarity in the concept of the body healing itself when it's given the space and the freedom and things are cleared out of the way, that the body has this innate healing power. What's your philosophy or your overarching philosophy on that side of things, as far as how do you trigger that healing process in the body?
Well, that's a very, very good question, because we live in a different century and a very different time in the planet's history. When Jensen was alive and was our age, We didn't have computers, the internet didn't have 5G, didn't have mRNA injections, didn't have chemtrail. I mean, the list goes on. Didn't have the high degree of fluoride pollution in water that's deliberately added. A lot of those issues did not exist when he was, in his 40s, 50s, even 60s. And he spoke out about them as they came out and became a thing. He was quite outspoken on genetically modified organisms, which was just coming in before he died. So, my philosophy is very much one that was followed. We've discussed Malcolm Harker, who was also a very well-known New Zealand herbal healer like yourself, who produced a range of products many years ago. And he wrote a book on the mucusless diet. Well, Jensen taught the mucusless diet, and being gluten-free, dairy-free was very important because you could tell from the lymphatic rosary in the iris if someone had a reactivity to dairy products. And if they persisted in eating them, they get a lot of mucoid congestion in the lungs, in the chest, women in the uterus and the vagina, and generally the bowel as well. And the whole body would become in a mucoid state, which would gum up the works. And that was a big part of the detoxification he did in his day. But this, of course, was before we've got all the modern interventions and massive amount of contaminated vaccines that people are getting. So, we're in a very different time now, and this is where it's up to our generation and younger ones to adapt and modify and improve and do testing and develop protocols to help people using natural medicine with modern issues that we now face.
Yeah, great. So your protocols around the whole cleansing, detoxing side of things, you're going obviously much deeper with it as well. So from what I understand, into the more of the biochemical detox as well.
Totally. I'm very focused on three key organs because I'm a naturopathic oncologist, the only qualified one in New Zealand now. I do a lot of work on the liver, kidneys, and spleen, the three filter organs that are damaged badly by chemotherapy. And you've got to flush them out. If people choose to do chemo, that's their choice. But I always detox them afterwards using your body cleanse or your ultimate herbal detox. And it gets profound results. I've written an article on biohacking chemotherapy, which I sent you, which talks about how you must detox between major round cycles of chemo to get the best out of it, so you can get away with using less chemo and get a better result longer term.
Right.
And I've been doing that for well over 5 years now.
That would help reduce a lot of the side effects and I guess encourage the recovery of the immune system and so on after rounds of chemo.
Exactly. But there's other things I do too. We target three endocrine glands: the adrenals, the thyroid, and the pancreas, which is known as the triple warmer in Chinese medicine. And usually most cancer patients have one or two, maybe even all three, are really, really low and poorly functioning. And we find that modern medicine misses thyroid big time. Adrenal fatigue, they don't even recognize it as a condition. And diabetes is so overly medicated with insulin and a number of toxic drugs now that, it's hard to reverse diabetes when people have been on insulin for many years and their pancreas is shut down.
Right. So I guess Bernard Jensen pioneering detoxing decades and decades ago, that the environment's become much, much worse now. People are loading up with so many more toxins.
Yep.
Is there a way that you can measure the toxins, or how do you pick up what exactly is the most pressing, area of toxicity for a person?
Good question.
Yeah.
There's the question of a clinician, because you want to test for it so you can measure it and then retest it to make sure you've got rid of it. A lot of tests I do, blood tests, urine tests, not so much iridology or serology these days. So I do a little bit, but that's done for different purposes for people on biohacking healing and extended wellness programs for people that don't have actual diseases. But I have used that. Dark field microscopy is one of my main tools, because remember, I trained as a medical scientist with the National Health Institute in Wellington as a microbiologist and a biochemist. So I've worked with microscopes since I was 21. In a professional way, and I'm now on my third or fourth microscope now, and it's just such a useful tool. But I do a lot of kinesiology. The 5 medical schools in the States, 3 of them teach kinesiology, 2 don't. They're much more conventional. All the chiropractic colleges teach it. All the naturopathic colleges and universities teach it. And most of the better herbal colleges in the States teach kinesiology as well. So that's a big part of what I do. And patients love it because they're involved in the testing. They can feel if I'm pressing hard or not. They know if I'm bullshitting them or not. And I'm not.
Yeah.
Very quickly. Even the most skeptical, I've had husbands sitting there sort of thinking, what's this guy doing? When I'm muscle testing their wife for they've got a breast cancer case or something. And then they ask a question. So, okay, let's find out what your body wants. So I test them, and they look startled when their arm falls off when it goes weak. And then suddenly the next time it's very strong, and it's obviously different.
It's an amazing thing. I use a bit of kinesiology too, and it's incredible how it can give you answers that you would never ever think of, and responses to things that perhaps you would never ever come across otherwise unless you use kinesiology. So it's an incredible tool, isn't it?
It's a very, very useful tool, and it can be used in an emergency situation. I've used it in emergency situations. And if you don't have a lot of time with a patient and you're by a roadside situation, you can body question them or a surrogate if they're unconscious to find out what's going on. And I've done that in an emergency situation. So it can be life-saving.
The body has its own intelligence, doesn't it? Without us being involved even.
But also we have divine intelligence. And when we activate the higher aspects of our being, then that's where the magic happens, in my view. And this is a lot of what the stuff that Bruce Lipton's teaching, who's been a good friend of mine for many years now. And wow, we've had some conversations in the past that really, I mean, if you're familiar with Bruce Lipton, I'm sure you've read some of his books. And
absolutely.
The mind-body aspect has really come into its own in the 21st century. There's a lot more, you would have noticed a lot more talk in professional journals and different colleagues about frequency and vibrational medicine, light therapies using lasers, sound using audio frequencies and non-audio frequencies. This whole area is stepped up. And Jensen and Reif and many of those other people that we learned from knew about this stuff, but it wasn't in wide acceptance. The difference now in the 21st century, in 2025, is there's a lot more public acceptance now that we don't need to be this straitjacketed pharmaceutical scientific model. We can open up and see, wow, there's Ayurvedic medicine, there's Chinese medicine, there's ancient naturopathic medicine and very high-tech modern naturopathic medicine, to name just a few.
Yeah, it's interesting how science is advancing at a rapid rate, and the more they discover, the more they realize that these ancient things actually had some merit, and they're finding more and more evidence for them being true.
Exactly.
Exactly. It dates back to the religious and spiritual disciplines as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely does. Being a spiritual person, not only have I read the Bible, but I've read the Bhagavad Gita. I've read a range of different texts, and I believe that all religions. Well, let's talk about this aspect of, because I'm a naturopathic oncologist, I deal with a lot of patients who are very seriously ill and have got a chance they might not make it, and so I have the spiritual discussion with them. And the research from overseas shows very clearly that patients who believe in God or a higher power or intelligent design or some being that has a much higher understanding of dimensional frequencies and is a creative force in the universe, if you believe in that, no matter what it is, you've got a 25% better chance of staying alive and well when faced with a terminal illness. Now, that's quite profound psychology research, and it's getting more out there by a lot of Christian scientists in the States and some in Europe, but more different religions are adding their epistemology of knowledge and wisdom from their particular religious upbringing, be it Buddhist or Hindu or Jewish or Christian. And they've all got an aspect of the divine, and to activate that aspect, to me, is where true healing takes place. And Bernard Jensen said many times, as did David Duggan, who was the president of the naturopathic college I went to, that you can't have healing unless you change your consciousness.
Right. Yeah, they all say the same thing, don't they? And I remember the Louise Hay era, in the late 80s. She came out with all of this body, mind, positive
Mm.
affirmations and the power of that. The placebo effect. We know that exists, don't we?
Louise was wonderful. I was
Mm.
very blessed to be invited to her 75th birthday in New Zealand.
Oh, wow.
She knew a couple of Aurosoma practitioners here, Graham and, oh gosh, I can't remember the lady's name, Graham Enger, who's passed away unfortunately now, and I forget her name, but his wife, she was the Aurosoma practitioner. And Louise would come to New Zealand often over the summers when she was in her 70s, because she could leave her bodyguard behind at LAX, because no one knew who she was in New Zealand. So she could walk down Queen Street and wouldn't get accosted by fans wanting an autograph. So she loved it here because she could get lost in the South Island. No one knew who she was.
Yeah.
And that's refreshing for someone who was so famous on the world stage as she was.
And we all know cancer patients. There's historically cancer patients that have a change of mind, that change their outlook or their attitude, often have a better chance of healing and recovering and getting a full recovery.
Absolutely.
I'm interested in your experience with cancer, because I know you've got a unique angle on cancer and how you approach it as well.
Well, I wouldn't say it's unique. It's common amongst naturopathic oncologists, but what we're trying to do is to broaden the spectrum of treatments available, recognizing the science very, very, I mean, it doesn't get much better than winning 2 Nobel Prizes. Would you agree?
That's right. Yeah.
So, the only 2 doctors in the world's history, the only 2 people, they just happened to both be medical doctors, that won 2 Nobel Prizes was Otto Warburg for discovering ozone, and his second Nobel Prize for proving it cured cancer. And then Professor Linus Pauling, the Swedish author molecular nutrition and molecular biologist professor, he won 2 Nobel Prizes, one for discovering vitamin C and one for proving it cured cancer. So I've used vitamin C and ozone many, many times in combination with other therapies, but I seek paths that are not well trodden by medical orthodox medicine, because there's usually a vested interest in why they're not pursuing it. If Big Pharma can't make lots of money out of it, they're not interested in pursuing it. I'm interested in pursuing therapies that work, can be scientifically proven to work. And as I said before, it doesn't get much better than twin Nobel Prizes. So that's part of it. But I do a whole lot of other things too. Naturopathic oncology is way more complex than orthodox oncology, and that's complicated enough with the specific genetic testing that's now done. Doctors in orthodox medicine get very fixated on categorizing and labeling tumors, so then they know which type of chemo to give or which specific chemical to dose them on. It's a very, very narrow, specific area of medicine, and it's not well balanced. They don't get taught how to detox properly. Most medical doctors think detoxification is giving up alcohol or coffee.
Yes, that's right.
They don't understand it at all.
Whereas many cancers are caused by what they call carcinogens, aren't they? And those carcinogens are toxins, primarily.
More and more in the environment now than there's ever been in the planet's history, and there's more being discovered all the time. And another couple have just been released into the world stage in 2020 with contaminants that were in a number of injections that were out there. And this stuff is being sidelined by orthodox medicine. They're pushed to pursue mRNA as this wonder new drug that can open up and cure Parkinson's and Lou Gehrig's disease or AMD, a whole range of leukemias, a whole range of what was considered previously medically incurable. They're dangling this carrot saying, oh, mRNA could be the future for this. Well, I don't think so. I've read a lot of papers on this stuff, including from the man who developed mRNA, and it just doesn't stack up.
There's still a lot of safety concerns around it, isn't there? And
too many that have been brushed under the carpet because it was rushed through because COVID was an emergency situation. And now we've got time after 5 years to step back and just have a look at what we did, the mistakes we made, and correct them pretty quickly, hopefully.
Yeah, well, I heard J.E. Bhattacharya, now the head of the NIH, say last week that there was 1 Nobel Prize for the mRNA technology, but there hasn't been a second Nobel Prize, which is what you were saying just earlier, that proves that it's safe or that it's effective.
And there needs to be. And I noticed
Yeah.
now that I watched this morning a clip on the alternative media. RFK has just announced that for the first time, no more new vaccines will be allowed on the market without double-blind placebo-controlled trials because, get this, they've never been done before,
That's
ever.
Right.
They've never, ever done a double-blind clinical controlled trial on any vaccine given to anyone last century. And that's appalling. And that truth, we've known this for some time, but the truth is finally coming out in the public arena. So the public's being softened for big changes ahead in America's health system for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So what else do you think might happen over there with RFK and stepping into the role there as director of HHS and so on?
Well, if he doesn't get taken out, because I mean the guy's got targets on his forehead, on his back, on everywhere, But if he hangs on in there, as I sincerely hope he does, once he's sorted out a lot of the corruption in the FDA, the NIH, and the CDC, and they're all three of them are highly corrupt organizations, just like the UN and WHO. Once he sorted those to some degree and put things in motion, he said that he will then look at legitimate claims being put on labels and on websites for herbal medicines, nutraceuticals, dietary supplements, and homeopathy, which is fantastic because it's never been legally allowed before because of Big Pharma.
Yeah, it's almost like they've been hiding the truth about a lot of these pharmaceuticals and then also suppressing the truth about a lot of the natural and herbal products,
Correct.
haven't they? Yeah.
So now, for the first time in my career in 40 years, 45 years, we're seeing it's not a level playing field because Big Pharma still gets so many subsidies for so many drugs. Yeah. Some of them needed, some of them not. There's a bit of corruption there for sure. But I think Pharmac in New Zealand's done a lot to root out much of that corruption. And it's bargained down on price a lot of the very expensive immunotherapy drugs and chemotherapy drugs. So I think Pharmac's done, on balance, a pretty good job so far, even though they're heavily underfunded by government agencies. And MedSafe's a whole other topic we won't talk about. But there's a whole lot of things going on in the medical system that we're seeing a renaissance in. Was divide really. There's those that know and those that don't, and are still being kept in the dark and not asking the right questions. And unfortunately, all the GPs and medical staff that are still practicing in the system haven't asked enough questions. Many people have and have got out, and that's why we've got so many shortages in orthodox medicine. And I appealed in an article I wrote in the New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine how we really do need to get as many people who've had medical training to jump the fence into bona fide natural medicines because we need healers.
Yeah.
Healers desperately, particularly after what's happened the last 5 years. So, we lost, I think it was 500 or 600 midwives in New Zealand.
Wow.
Because of the vaccine mandates.
Yes.
And the lockdowns and all the rest of it.
Yeah, there were thousands of doctors that got bulk exemptions from vaccines as well, but they were still allowed to continue practicing. And I don't think anybody knew that at the time.
It's amazing. Most of Meds Safe and the Prime Minister's office and cabinet were all given exemptions, and that was kept quiet.
Yeah, incredible, isn't it?
There's a lot of corruption. Even everyone thinks New Zealand's low in the corruption stakes. Wrong.
It's a worldwide problem, isn't it? Yeah, and it's been a long road and a long struggle for natural medicine to get recognition or any kind of acceptance by the mainstream system. And it's possibly there's a glimmer of hope. There's maybe a light at the end of the tunnel for public awareness after this COVID debacle, I guess you call it.
Oh, look, you're bang on, Brett. I mean, there's no doubt about it. People are asking questions. I mean, I bump into a lot of people just in day-to-day life. And because of my stance on what's happened in the last 5 years, I'm pretty upfront and open about it, and I challenge people's belief systems. And most of the people I come across know someone who's been jab injured. They may even know someone who knows someone else who died. So I just say, just keep asking questions. Keep asking questions. Don't believe what the propaganda machine, mainstream media is feeding you, because most of it isn't true.
Yeah. I think we're learning to be a bit more skeptical and research for ourselves and learn more before we make our decisions and so on.
Discernment. quality that we encourage in natural medicine.
Absolutely. So I understand you've got some plans going forward over this next year or so. You're getting out there again and getting a bit
Yeah,
more in the public sphere. Yeah.
well, during the lockdowns, I had a few spiritual epiphanies because I did a bit of a meditation retreat and a prayer retreat, and I was being paid to do nothing by the government, and I'm not the sort of person to consider my laurels and do nothing. So I started researching the jabs and found out more about them. That was all on the real alternative media in those days, not the mainstream alternative media they call it now, the MAM, as David Icke calls it. But I found out what was really going on, who was behind it, many people behind it, and why, and what the money that was being made and the real agenda behind it. And it just opened up a whole new area for me. I thought, what does the planet need right now to counter this evil that's descended on the planet during what was the COVID lockdowns, mandates, and the whole, if you've got a time machine, just put a red X through 2020, 21, 22. Don't go to planet Earth on those 3 years.
Yeah, it's about right. Yeah.
So it's like that really spurred me to looking, there's got to be a way of bringing multi-dimensional healing that's scientifically validated using new high technology and ancient wisdom combined. And so I created Biohacking Healing.
Okay.
That's my latest project that I'm launching now with 2 new websites, and we're on 5 social media platforms. So if you haven't heard about Biohacking Healing, you will.
Excellent, excellent. So are you planning to do something around New Zealand or heading overseas with that as well?
It's all going to be online, so it's available globally, but we'll be targeting Australia, New Zealand, and North America, and eventually probably the UK and parts of the EU, mainly limited to English-speaking countries, of course. But it'll be a global phenomenon, and there's 4 levels. If you want to know more, go to biohackinghealing.com. And if you want to take part in a 5-day free challenge, go on to biohackinghealing.org. O-R-G.
I'll drop some
information there.
I'll drop some links in below for everyone as well. So I guess last question. How have you found the Herbal Body Cleanse product fits in with your protocol?
Brilliant. I mean, as you know, it's the biggest detox I use. I do use a solvent detox, a heavy metal detox, and a chelation detox to clear the arteries of plaque, and a few other detoxes since the COVID-19 jabs have come around. But your one is the one I use with all my cancer patients, except those that have got a stoma. That's a bag because they've had some problems with the bowel, because they can't actually use your product with the stoma because it increases the bowel volume so much because of the laxative in it, which for most people is really, really good. They need that because most people who've had cancer have had a history of constipation or erratic bowel motions, and your product really cleans it out and gives it a chance to reset and start again. So everyone that I put on body cleanse, or I used to use the Ultimate Herbal Detox until the body cleanse came out, I always make sure they have a dietary change straight afterwards. They usually get epiphanies about their diet. They realize they're eating too much sugar, drinking too much coffee, maybe having a little bit too much alcohol more regularly, maybe having a bit of processed food sneaking in because they're busy at work and they want a quick lunch. They go to McDonald's or whatever it is. So just using a detox as a chance to clean up your diet, clean up your lifestyle, maybe go for walks in the morning, because most people after a detox feel more energetic. They leap out of bed, they think, wow, I've got more oomph. I need to do more exercise.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be walking, but swimming, anything, whatever turns your dial, just get out there and move.
Mm-hmm. Well, fantastic. It's been really good talking to you, David. Really good to catch up again. And I'm sure we'll do this again. We'll have to dig a bit deeper into a couple of these subjects and see what we can come up with.
As you want.
Excellent. All right, David. Well, thanks again, and taking the time out to talk to us.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we'll talk again soon.
Yeah.
Take care.